It's an island foodscape takeover. If anybody asks, we call it permaculture. Planting seeds, we secure our family's future. What you give is what you got from the roots on up. What you give is what you got from the roots on up. What you give is what you got from the roots on up. Yeah.
Aloha, Dash Kuhr here with HIP Agriculture. This episode is about Kalo, and I'm so happy that we have a guest teacher here today, Iana, with us.
Aloha Mahi, my name is Iana Runnels. I'm with the Kohala Center. This is Ha'aloa. Ha'aloa is our ancestor. We as a Hawaiian people descend from Ha'aloa. We are inseparably connected to this plant for many reasons. One of the reasons is not just our ancestral lineage, but without the Kalo plant, we as Kanaka would not be able to survive here in Hawaii, especially when we first arrived. Our kupuna first came here, this was the main staple crop. This was their food. The powerful thing about Kalo is that every part of the plant is edible, except for those fine lateral roots on the corm. So we have the leaf that we eat, lu'au. We can wrap it up, make laulau. We can use it as a lu'au stew. And it's just in super highly nutritious edible green. We have the ha that can be eaten as well. We can eat the ha in a ha stew, or you can even throw it in your lu'au stew. So the ha is also edible. I typically like to peel off the skin, the outer skin. It's pretty high in calcium oxalate, which is an itchy crystal that makes your throat itch. And then the corm, of course, is what we're all very familiar with. The traditional way it was consumed was typically in the form of poi, because as you took that kalo and you broke it down into a paste and you added water, it would now preserve almost indefinitely. Whereas our kupuna didn't have refrigerators where they could toss the corn in the fridge and wait, right? They had to figure out ways to preserve it. And so fermenting it was one of the most nutritious and best ways to consume this plant. Kalo is like us. The more varieties we have of the kalo, the more varieties we have of us, we have an increased chance of surviving things like disease. And so there is power in preserving these varieties because each one has a specific name, a specific role, and a very specific location of where it was grown traditionally. So this is in the Piko Ohana. Has a light colored ha, so I can narrow it down to 2. But this is Piko Kea. All pikos have this sinus cut straight down to the piko, and they also have a real sharp ridge on the back of the ha. And that's what makes them wind resistant. Naturally, when the wind blows, what you're gonna see happen to the kalo is kalamai, but this is what's gonna happen first of all. On every variety, when the winds come hard, the kalo wants to rip there. So as it rips there, time and time again, it becomes a morphological trait, and that's how we got this family. This right here is mana'ulu. Mana'ulu is famous all over Hawaii. One of 4 kalo in Hawaii that make yellow poi. So today when you go into the store, the typical color of poi you'll see is gray or purple. If it's gray, it's moi. And if it's purple, it's most likely maui lehua or some hybrid off lehua. But we have all kinds of colors of kalo. We have kalo that can make yellow poi, purple poi, red poi, pink poi. I've even seen kalo make blue poi, fluorescent green poi, and everything in between. And every kalo variety has its own flavor and most likely its own nutrient value. This is mana'ulu. This is the flower. Oh, it smells so good. This is all the pollen right there that comes out. This is the male. So on a lot of our varieties, this part we actually eat. This is super ono. This is a spice that we use. You still have to cook it because it has the the calcium oxalate in it. And then you can just add it to your stew or your curry and it changes the entire flavor of your meal. Mana'ulu you can see from far away. It has some yellowing in the primary Y vein and red in the piko. Super ono, the poi is real ulika. This pink blush on the ha. Sometimes they get almost entirely pink. So this is Ele Ele Naiawea, one of 2 Ele Ele sisters that we have today. They were their own families originally, but now we only have 2 left. Ele Ele Makoko is the sister to this one. This is Ele Ele Nauea. It has a light bronzing on the leaf. This is, it makes a really, really red poi. There was about 10 varieties of kalo that make red poi, and this one bleeds just like we do. Haloa has so many things in common with us as Kanaka, because not only does it bleed the same color as us, but it takes about 9 months to mature as well, just like we do in our mama's opu. There's a lot of symbolisms between the two.
For us in Hawaii, we really specialize kalo production here because of our lo'is, or our aquaculture systems that we had. We were able to crossbreed them very early on, but there's such an affinity for kalo because it is our ancestor. We as Kanaka, we as Hawaiians come from Haloa, and so even if you can't tie back to one of the great chief lines, some of us, we can't all be chiefs, right? Some of us have to be the maka'inana here. But that is our ancestor that we all know we can go back to as Haloa. And so when we speak about Haloa, or when we speak about ulu, we're not just talking about a food source for us, we're really talking about a deeper connection to DNA and genealogy.
Kalo is a real great symbol for our ohana. Not only does everything about Haloa bring ohana together, ohana plants kalo together, ohana harvest kalo together, ohana consume kalo together, but the kalo plant itself grows in ohanas. And so if you're looking here, we have the makua. This is the parent corm, the mommy corm. This is the huli that was planted in the ground. As that huli grows, it grows real tall and it provides shade for the oha. Yeah, some people call this a keiki, but they're actually called oha. And oha is a root term for the word ohana. Kalo is one of the least selfish plants you'll find, because as opposed to something like a banana that'll catch all the water it can, or a bromeliad, when you watch kalo as it rains, it gathers all of the water here in the leaf and it feeds it to the kalo next to him. And that's why we never plant kalo by itself. We plant it with other kalo because they're used to being in groups, in families, in a community, just like us as people. And they feed each other. And so this is an ohana, this is the makua, this is the oha. Kalo grow in families.
All right, so this is a little taro nursery bank that we have here. When we have small huli, small starts that aren't ready to go into the field, we like to nursery them so they get a little larger and more prepped and ready to prep. And so today Kaiana is going to be showing us his protocol for preparing kalo huli.
What I like to do with my kalo, if I'm planting it in my own garden, I'll only strip off a few of the ha. And there's easy ways to do this. Sometimes if the ha is real big, you can give it a little slice at the bottom, and then you can just stick your nail in and peel the ha off. But when they're young, they're pretty easy to pull off. And I'll strip it down to about 2, the last 2 ha. So I've taken out all of the older outer ha layers. Again, this is the ha, okay? This is the i'o, and this is the kohina, where the ha meets the i'o. Inside this kohina is where the meristem lies. And that meristem is all you need, a little piece of that, to grow a whole new kalo plant. And so this right here, what you like to do is you want to find the apex where that new leaf is going to come out. And this apex is where the new shoot will come and emerge and become the new low. You never want to cut below that apex because you don't want to cut into that new leaf that wants to emerge. So what I like to do is I like to find that and just cut right above it. That is a huli. You want to take the corm off. How short you cut your corm is totally up to you. You never want to cut above the kohina because then your kalo plant won't grow. And if you cut too low and you leave too much of the i'o or the corm on, sometimes it rots in the ground. So it's all about your intention. Think about what your intent is. If your intent is to grow a nice big kalo corm, you're going to want to cut it real close to the kohina, this line that separates the ha from the corm. And if you want to, say you have only one of these ula ula kumu, and I want to get a lot of oha, I would cut the corm a little bit bigger. I'd leave a few more centimeters or so onto my corm, And so it leaves more of these little makas, these little islets, and then you'll get more keiki. So it's all about whatever your intent is. There are many ways to plant a kalo huli. There's a lot of mana'o that goes behind it, but the first thing that's going to determine how you plant your huli is your intention. If you want to grow big corms, we talked about cutting the huli low, but you would also face this point of the huli towards the rising sun. That's a real cool way of planting kalo. And when you plant it that style facing the rising sun, the corm becomes real big because that leaf opens up and catches the sun right away. If you wanted more keiki, you would plant it more in a hina style, where you would face this little bend, this little point up here towards the setting sun. And that would give you a lot more keiki. But the second biggest thing that determines how you plant your huli is going to be where you live. If you live in a spot with nice, deep, rich lepo, no problem. You can plant the huli pretty deep and you'd pack the soil around it pretty firm because you don't want the wind to blow your kalo over. If you plant it shallow and that makani nui comes and blows it, it'll come right over before it can take root. Kalo, you like to plant in a lua, typically in a pit if you have access to dirt. And when you plant it in that pit, as the kalo grows, that pit naturally caves in and fills itself up, or you could throw lepo on top. And you basically always want to keep the bottom, the corm, hidden from the sun. There are ways to plant if you don't have dirt as well. You can build a rock bed. You can surround it with rock and add lots of organic matter. Ulu leaves, hapu'u fern, whatever you have to basically break down and create that soil. A lot of people in areas with 3 to 4 inches of soil only here on Hawaii Island will plant their huli lying down, flat. And the 2 to 3 inches of soil is like that. And as the kalo grows, it grows up and out of the ground. And you get these weird shaped corms looking like beaks. But you can grow food in 3 inches of soil. There's always a way to grow this. In Kalapana, they're famous for pahala. Well, they'll take all of the hala trees, the puhala, and they'll cut them down and light them on fire. And then they'll plant the kalo right in that burnt ash. There's always a way to grow food, especially when you're working with haloa where you live. You know when your kalo is ready because it will grow real tall, sometimes even taller than you. And then as that kalo matures, it shrinks down to a tiny little plant. And it sends all of that energy from the ha into the i'o, into the corm. And the corm becomes real big and the kalo starts to peek out of the ground. And when this is peeking out of the ground, you know your kalo is ready. You could take your kalo out, stick your knife in the mole in the bottom of the kalo. If your knife goes in real fast, your kalo's overripe. You waited too long. But if it's pa'a and your knife goes in just a little bit, you harvested your kalo at a perfect time. So this is what the i'o, or the corm, looks like after it's cooked. It's usually cooked in an imu. Nowadays we steam it. I would recommend not boiling it if you're going to ku'i because you kind of put too much water into the i'o. The number one rule with this whole process is try to keep your i'o dry if you're ku'iing by hand. It makes it easier to get the pu'upu'us or the bumps out. This was the top where the huli was cut. These are the makas where the new plants would have grown if it wasn't cooked. And this is the mole. You can see how that huli, after it's planted, it curves in. And what you typically would like to use is an iwi opihi. If you don't have iwi opihi, you can use a shard from a coconut shell, the iwi niu. You can use a traditional Hawaiian metal spoon. Or you can use whatever you have next to you to ihi ai. So there's 2 stages to cleaning the kalo. Pohole is without the iwi, so the iwi is going to go here. And pohole, what you're going to do is use your thumbs, and you're just going to take out that outer layer of skin. So this skin is called ili. And all you're going to do is you're going to roll it around and just take out the outer skin with your thumbs. Some islands call it ohole, but on this mokupuni, on Hawaii Island, we call it pohole. And now I'm going to take my iwi opihi and do the ihi ai. And when I do it real light. I'm not digging in like a mini excavator, right? I'm staying at the surface and just getting that ilikana right off. Okay? And so this part right here, this ilikana, that is what you feed your animals with. So haloa is great because we can feed kanaka, we can feed aina, and we can feed our holoholona, our animals too. The number one rule for working with haloa, especially once it's cooked, you want to be clean. Cleanliness is so important. So when it's done, it should look like this, real clean. Okay? If you see any imperfections, any last bits of ili, get them out. Okay, so now that our kalo is cooked and we did the pohole and the ihi'ai, we're now ready to ku'i. Some important things before we ku'i is, again, bringing that good intention to the board, to the kalo, to haloa. The basic things you'll need is you'll need a papa ku'i'ai. A papa is a flat surface that you ku'i. This is the ku'i motion. Ai is food, but more specifically in this case, kalo. So you need a papa ku'i'ai, and you'll need a pohaku ku'i'ai. A pohaku is a stone. Again, this is a ku'i motion, and then ai is your food. There's a ka'e here, which you use it as a knife when you're breaking into your kalo. And then there's the ku'au, or the handle, yeah, this part that you grip. And then there's the top part, poheo or maku'u. And maku'u is the top of your top knot, the bun that sits on your head. That's also a maku'u, and you can kind of see how that got its name. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your kalo and you're going to hold it with one hand, and you're going to use this ka'e to bite into this kalo called naha. Make sure your papa actually has a thin film of water on it so it doesn't stick. So you don't want a lot of water on your papa. You just want to make it a little bit shiny so that the kalo doesn't stick to the board too much, like that. Yeah, and then all you're going to do is you're going to use this ka'e and you're going to break into the kalo. And this stage is called naha. Can you guys say naha?
Naha.
Very good. So as you naha, you're going to find that the kalo is being broken up into smaller chunks. And this stage of ku'i is called moku moku. Can you guys say moku moku?
Moku moku.
So moku is island. There's a lot of definitions for moku, but one is island. And moku moku is islands, right? It's a reduplication of moku. So what we typically have here is a bunch of small pieces of kalo broken up into the islands. When you get it to the moku moku stage, it's real nice because you can put your kalo right in the middle of the islands, and it kind of holds your kalo in place when you naha. Yeah? And you just go easy as you break up into this kalo. So the goal here is just to break up all the big kalo pieces into a little bit smaller chunks. You're not trying to process it all the way. You're just going to break it up into small chunks. And when they run away on you, just bring them back into the center. Okay, so now this stage right here is called pa'i pa'i. Can you guys say pa'i pa'i? So pa'i is this motion right here. It's to slap. So you're kind of slapping the food together and you're bringing it into a nice big ball. So this right here is called holo'ai. And holo'ai is really, it's a traveling food. At this stage right here, it's already going to last longer than it was as aipa'a when it was just cooked. It's a really simple processing of the food. You can wrap this in la'i and you can go take it down to Tutu's house and she can finish it. That naha stage was the hardest stage of the kalo. A lot of times it takes the most muscle when your kalo is real pa'akiki or real hard. And so holo'ai, you can eat it on the way, or you can go take it and travel with it, or you can just take it from this stage down from holo'ai into pa'i'ai, okay? And that's what we're going to do now. There's different strokes when you use a pohaku. For a small amount of food like this, you're not going to see us needing to go like this, because that's just not always, it's not as safe, right? So we're going to just go easy and process it down. If you're doing a lot of ai, then you would need a bigger stroke. And again, a ku'i is from ka'e to ka'e. It's a rocking motion. Yeah, this is a ku'i, and then there's a fast one like that we call anai. So we're going to take the holo'ai down into pa'i'ai. And it's real simple, real easy. You're just looking for the pu'u's, the little bumps, and you're trying to work those out real nice. Ooh, that looks ono. And as you're ku'iing, you're kind of folding it back, the food back into itself. So there's some tricks when you ku'i. If you look real careful, right before my stone hits the food, I'm actually giving it just a soft release. And that soft release is making it so that over time, my body's not taking the shock of the pohaku hitting the board or the food. That small release really will save you. If you're doing, 50 pounds for baby luau, just give it a small, soft release. And then there's this trick right here where you're getting a little bit of water on your left hand or whatever hand you're using. And as your stone's coming up, you're using your left hand to apply the water to the bottom of the stone, and you're also helping your right arm to lift the pohaku. So this motion is doing two things. It's adding water, but it's also helping my stone to lift every other stroke. So we're already at the pa'i'ai stage, but we want to take it from pa'i'ai to more of a poi consistency, or at least get it ready to turn into poi. So as of right now, this is still not poi, yeah? It's not poi until it comes off your board, really. And it's in the bowl, and it's getting ho'ovali'd, or mixed together. This stage right here, it's important to know these moves right here. This move, one way is called kupelu, and the other way is called kupele. And what you're doing is you're really just folding the food back into itself. Because instead of chasing the food all the way around the board, I'm bringing the food back to one spot. If you watch my pohaku, it's hitting the same spot every time, right here. And I bring the food to me rather than chasing the food around, yeah? Oh no.